Sure.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order and I will toss it right over to our Executive Director, Jackie Backrack.
I was unmuted the whole time and now I muted myself. Welcome everybody. I wanted to briefly give our little quarterly update, and we're still Zooming, as you can tell. Last time we met, it was October 2021. And so I'll give you a little bit of an idea of what's happened since then. So next slide, please. We'll go over the following projects. We're obviously even doing more than this, but these are some of the ones that are keeping us busy. So next slide. Our fiber network, just as a reminder, we are now completely connected, our lateral ring. Next slide. And we have 37 sites billing. We have 3 more sites that are going to be coming on. The communication center in Hawthorne and 2 sites in Lomita. We're working with Redondo and Torrance on their transit centers and exploring what the cost is. We're getting low on the amount of Measure M money that we did dedicate for this initial stage. But the most exciting thing, I think, is that we are working with our partner, American Dark Fiber, to bring in additional operators who can provide services to businesses and hopefully residents too. We're starting with businesses. What we've realized is there are pockets, 2 that I know of right now are the Torrance Airport pocket, and there's an industrial area in Carson where the companies actually have terrible, terrible service. And we're going to try to figure out if we can bring in someone within the next 6 months to service those areas through our fiber network or working with our fiber network. So we're pretty excited about that. We're also working with Supervisor Mitchell's office on some sites to pilot a neighborhood center. And we're a neighborhood center would bring our fiber into the community and provide high-speed internet access. As you know, the state has a goal to bring fiber to every single home. That's going to take a very long time, and we think that we can get a quick win-win by bringing it to the neighborhood and then making a robust neighborhood center that has telework, telehealth, workforce training programs, and it can be right in people's neighborhoods, and it can be accessed by our local travel network or walking. So we're trying to meld our programs together, and the fiber network is the start of that. We're also working with our cities on discussing the ability of wireless and micro trenching to extend our network at a much less expensive but as reliable a way to get fiber into the community. So that's the next step on fiber. Next slide. I mentioned our local travel network. This you can see on the right, if you can tell, we've mapped streets that are slow speed streets in the South Bay. And as we've said every time, I think 70% of our trips are 3 miles or less. So if people would not use a standard car for that, but use a neighborhood electric vehicle or a bike or a scooter or a trike, we could get those cars off the road and we'd have 0 emission from our transportation. We're going to work on signage so that the streets that are the part of the local travel network will be signed. Full speed cars will be allowed on them, but it will say, please know you're part of the local travel network if you're on this street, and there will be slow speed vehicles. We're working with the beach cities on a corridor implementation in the beach area, and then with Gardena, Hawthorne, and Lawndale on a implementation in the inland area. And then the goal, of course, is to connect the entire South Bay. This has led to 2 proposals, which we're working with several of our legislators on. One is in order to have neighborhood electric vehicles as part of our network, we need a state, there's a state designation that's required, and we need legislation for that. That's pretty pro forma. The other is last year, the legislature, I think it was last year, voted on a rebate for electric bikes. And we want legislation to open that rebate up to all 0 emission, slow speed powered vehicles, so that if someone wants to buy a scooter or an electric or a Segway or something, they can get a rebate, and it will encourage people to use that as their transportation. There's so many things that you can buy at Best Buy right now, or Target or whatever, that we would like all of those to be incentivized. And we have a story map. If you haven't done our story map or looked at it, please visit it, because it'll give you a good indication of what we're talking about. Next slide. Transportation, we're doing a lot of monitoring. Metro obviously has many, many different projects, and we're trying to follow all of them. I think one thing that's interesting is that the councils of governments that are on the 405 from the county line on one end to the county line on the other end are meeting semi-regularly to talk about all of the projects on the 405, how they can work together, and how we need to understand how one project is impacting another. So we're getting together and doing that on our own to try to coordinate the projects on the 405. Other than that, the EIR extension for the Green Line to Torrance is expected in the fall, and then there's all these other projects that we're monitoring. Next slide. With our own money, we have Measure R and Measure M. As you know, we have given some of the Measure R money, allocated it to transit, which you can do after 10 years of the project. And so this 831 is partially highway, partially transit. And then on our highway program, that Measure M program, excuse me, we have given off $1 million already. So this is a lot of money. This is that we've invested in South Bay transportation projects. And we're every fall, we kick off the next cycle. Next slide. We're doing so much with homeless. Bronson Chu is on the line, and he is doing an incredible job of getting actual sites that we can work on for providing people real housing. We have a 20-unit Project Homekey site in Redondo Beach. We have 2 additional sites we're looking at in Carson and Inglewood. There's 2 motels that are interested in providing housing, but they're really too small for some of the established programs. So we're working with those. We've even identified 2 Caltrans sites, but they are Superfund sites, and we have no idea how much cleanup or what that would cost. But those are the kinds of things we're looking at, is how do we really unearth literally areas in the South Bay that we can provide people housing. HomeShare South Bay is still going strong. We match home providers with housemates. If you know of people that are interested in helping someone who might be at risk of losing a home, you know, that the biggest statistic with homelessness is that we house many people a day. They say 202, I think is the number. And every day, I forgot the rest of them, or 230 or something, fall into homelessness. So we're constantly playing catch up. And if we can prevent people from becoming homeless, then we're clearly going to make a dent in that. So please look at our HomeShare South Bay. And then an issue that came up that I wanted to bring to the attention of the legislators actually is that a bill was passed, AB 1482, which put a 5% rent cap on apartments, but it did not include mobile homes. And what we're finding out is that, for example, at this particular senior mobile home that's listed here, the owner is new. He wants to pass on an 18% rent increase. And so we would love someone to pick up the mantle and see if we can amend AB 1482 so that mobile home parks are covered as well. Next slide. Our environmental programs, we're still doing climate action plans for our cities and helping them figure out how successful they are in meeting the goals they did establish by doing inventories for each of them and then working with them on getting their goals met. Water programs, there is, if you're in a community with disadvantaged people, there is a high efficiency clothes washer rebate program that is it's focused on that community. I think others actually can apply, but it's focused on disadvantaged communities. Cash for kitchens for South Bay businesses. And then we have Rain Barrel giveaways. And we actually have a date here, January 29th in El Segundo and February 5th in Carson. Next slide. We're also doing energy efficiency programs with our partners and providing information on food waste. I wanted to mention we actually have 2 environmental newsletters and 1 regular newsletter, which is our quarterly Baywatch. If you haven't signed up, please go to our website and sign up for our newsletters. One is general environmental news. The other is for green businesses. And then we have our regular South Bay Watch. Next slide. And of course, every one of these ends with our General Assembly. It's coming up on March 24th. It's currently planned to be in person from 8:30 to 1:30, a little shorter than we usually have it. This year we're having, we're very excited. We have confirmation from several venture capitalists who will be coming to talk about how they prognosticate where to put their money and how they see into the future. We figured if we had the private sector telling us what their vision is for the future, it might be very helpful to cities. So it's a completely different perspective than we've had before. And I hope you'll save the date and plan to come. And I just noticed that because we're doing Zoom on everything, I forgot to put the address down. And so it will be in person, and it's the Carson Community Center, the Juanita Melinda McDonald Community Center in Carson. You can register right now on our website, and I hope that you'll go and do that. Next slide. Oh, we're also taking exhibits. If legislators would like to have exhibits or cities, please let us know, and I will take any questions. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Right, thank you, Jackie, for that update. We are going to move right along. We have some federal representatives on the call today. We'll start first with our Senator Feinstein's office. Is Jeanette Christian on the call?
Hi, this is Jeanette Christian. I'm sorry I can't be on video. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Thank you for joining us.
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me. Good morning, Happy New Year. I'm sorry, I think 2 years of work from home has finally taken a toll on my computer and it just wasn't, Zoom just crashed. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeanette Christian. I'm with Senator Feinstein's office. I know you guys gave us questions ahead of time, so I think I can share by answering both questions with a general answer. To begin, the last year did unfortunately see some Senate gridlock, and we were unable to pass Build Back Better. But I don't think that Congress is completely gridlocked, because last year we were able to pass the Bipartisan Infrastructure Deal, also known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which I believe is the greatest investment of infrastructure that our senator has voted on, that our nation has ever passed. And we were also able to pass 2 COVID relief bills. So I know the question asked that with Senate or with Congress being gridlocked, will we be able to pass anything? But I don't think, I do think there's hope for the new year that we should be able to pass a few additional bills. Speaking of the infrastructure bill, I did want to share a resource document that goes through the various parts of the infrastructure bill. And this is a funding guide that shares the funding by agency and describes how each grant will be distributed and the formulas. So Natalie's going to share that in the chat. I was able to send that over to her. And before you ask me questions about each department's formula and each specific grant for your city, I just got this document a few days ago. It's around 37 pages. There will be about 8 U.S. departments that will be distributing the funding and the various grants. So I'm happy to schedule a meeting with each city if there are follow-up questions or to consider letters of support from our office. It's a really interesting document that can kind of go through, and you can take a look to see if your cities or the region can apply for different infrastructure related projects, which is really exciting. And that kind of also goes to the questions about all the water droughts and the wildfires. And in the infrastructure bill, there were a lot of provisions and a lot of grants that are going to be going to fire and water related activities. So if I can send to Natalie again a little bit more of the details on the infrastructure bill, that would include $5 billion for underground power lines and to help install fire resistant technology. It also helps our federal firefighters with their wage gap and give them a competitive salary, because as I don't know if you guys knew, but they are actually making about 50% less than our state firefighters. So this will help the federal firefighters combat fires on federal land. And as far as water infrastructure goes, the senator obviously has been invested for many years ensure that California can replace some of our aging water infrastructure and save water during our wet years for our dry ones. And this includes funding for water recycling and desal programs. And there's a lot of different, I think there's about 1.5 billion for water storage projects to hold more water, and 1 billion for water recycling projects, and then a few million for some different environmental programs for Western water, and some restoration programs. So there's a lot in the bill that will help with water and fire related activities. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Jeanette. Just to note, I don't know if everyone else is having the same problem. The link is taking us to a site that looks like it may not be updated. I'm not sure if everyone's having that problem, but thank you very much for that update. Excited about the infrastructure bill and what that could mean for all of our cities. So thank you. Next up, we will have an update from Araceli Rucalba.
Hey, Stacey, before we go
Yes.
there, there's a banner at the top of that that website. And if you click on the banner above the headline,
There we
you'll
go.
you'll get to ARP. Okay.
Got it. There we go. Thank you. Thanks,
You're
Steve.
welcome. Okay.
Okay, so can everyone open it? Because it's really interesting. I think the cities will definitely be interested in seeing the different programs. If not, I can try to save it and give it to you in a different format through Natalie.
It's definitely working on my end. So maybe that was a little
Okay,
bit of
sounds good.
user error. All right.
Okay,
Thanks,
thanks.
Jeanette. And tossing it over to Araceli with Nanette Barden's office. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Just to confirm, can you guys all hear me? Okay, great. Always have to check before I start rambling and no one can hear me. So I'll just get started. My name is Araceli. I work for the Office of Congresswoman Nanette Barragan. I can get started on the two questions that were provided to us. So the first one was on the district boundary changes. So like most of the congressional districts in LA County, the district represented by Congresswoman Barragan will change significantly at the end of next year. Unlike the new Los Angeles County supervisorial districts, which went into effect already, the new congressional maps do not go into effect until next year. After this year, California 44th District will no longer include the city of Compton, nor the communities of Watts, Willowbrook, Walnut Park, Florence, Firestone, and East and West Rancho Dominguez. But starting next year, the district will include more of Long Beach, such as the West Side and Bisbee Knox, the city of Paramount, unincorporated West Carson, as well as parts of Lakewood, Bellflower, Harbor City, Harbor Gateway, and the portion of Northwest San Pedro that's currently in Red Blues district. And then I can move on to the second question, which was in regards to what the federal government is doing to ensure the issues caused by the pandemic related to supply chain issues don't continue to reoccur. So many of the issues with the supply chain disruptions are related to the lack of investment in goods movement infrastructure. So with the Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Deal, it will provide around $17 billion to modernize our ports, a key component to strengthening our supply chain, especially at the Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach, where 40% of our nation's products are imported into. The funding will also allow for the ports to develop on-dock rail, which will move cargo more efficiently through the ports, and deepen berths at terminals to accommodate larger next-generation ships and mitigate some of the terminal congestion caused by the large number of smaller container ships entering the ports. The infrastructure deal will also include $400 million to reduce truck emissions for too long our port communities, such as Wilmington, have been disproportionately burdened with emissions from truck traffic and the related health impacts. We also still need the Senate to pass the Build Back Better Act, which will provide additional assistance, particularly towards transitioning the goods movement to a zero emission future. This bill will include approximately $3.5 billion to reduce air pollution at ports by replacing diesel fuel equipment with zero emission technology. This is based off the Congresswoman's Climate Smart Ports Act, which she pushed forward. It also includes around $600 million to support more sustainable port infrastructure and supply chain resilience, and $20 million for workforce development programs, which will be essential to training workers of today and tomorrow with opening and repairing zero emission technologies. As a reminder, the House already passed the Build Back Better Act in November of last year, but still needs to go through the Senate before President Biden can sign it into law. So investments like these are why the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and Build Back Better Act are so important for our nation's economy and the quality of life in our port communities and the environment. And those are all my updates, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. And yes, thank you for including us.
Thank you, Araceli, for being here. Thank you for that update, and let our Congress member know we appreciate all of her efforts. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I was gonna mention, I don't think we said that we did send questions to each office, but that does not preclude anybody today asking other questions, but we thought we'd ask questions in advance so we'd get some of our issues addressed. So thank you. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Jackie. All right, we have Aurelia Friedman here from Congressmember Liu's office for her update. Aurelia?
Thank you so much. Happy New Year. I'll start with just some general updates about what our office has done in 2021, just kind of some top statistics and kind of bills that we introduced, and then I'll go into the questions. So in 2021, we introduced 43 bills. We co-authored 461 bills. We closed nearly 2,000 constituent cases, 1,914 to be exact. We sent 31,774 responses to constituent mail. That ranges from opinions and just calls in for people who requested a response. We also recouped about $7.98, nearly $8 million for constituents in casework. That could range from getting the stimulus checks to people who are having a hard time getting them, the Social Security benefits and veterans benefits. It's a pretty impressive number. And then in terms of bills that we got through, we introduced a bill that became law to expand the West LA VA's campus ability to house homeless veterans, and rallied support from federal and local officials to find homeless veteran housing after Secretary McDonough visited the West LA VA campus and the congressman was there. He made a commitment to close the Brentwood encampment. So that was a pretty big accomplishment last year. We helped pass the American Rescue Plan Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law that Jeanette talked about earlier, both of which were signed into law by President Biden. We co-authored the article of impeachment, and the congressman served as an impeachment manager last year for former President Trump. We led 90 members of Congress in calling for a DOJ investigation into the repeated and wrongful targeting of Asian Americans. We introduced the Fighting Homelessness Through Services and Housing Act, which we worked on with Senator Feinstein, a bill that would be addressed to the root causes of homelessness. And we hope that there's some movement on that this year. We launched the California Coastal Caucus in Congress and called for a ban on offshore drilling after the Huntington Beach oil spill. And we secured over $10 million for CA33 community projects in fiscal year 2022 House Appropriations Bill. And that money right now is in the Senate to be approved. In terms of the grants that have to do with the infrastructure bill, our office, and I think some of you have probably already received the invitation or your city managers have, we're having a grants information session on the bipartisan infrastructure bill for city staff and for water districts, transportation agencies, and the COG was also invited to this. That's on January 27th at 1 p.m. And our staff is going to be handling that, where we're going to be going over some of the key grants in the bill: transportation, energy, environment, and water are some of the major areas that will be covered. Broadband's also included. We look forward to seeing some of you there. We hope to get some representatives from DOT and the Department of Energy and probably the EPA as well to come and answer any questions you may have. And our office is always willing to help with grant support letters. If you have an active application for any federal grant, our office, if you give us 2 weeks notice, we can help with providing a letter of support, especially if it's in our district. We also have Service Academy Day coming up, which is an annual event and will be handled virtually. All of these events will be handled virtually because of the Omicron variant. February 19th at 1 p.m. for the Service Academy Day, and we'll have flyers for that, as well as our congressional art competition for high school students, which will be on March 12th at 1 p.m. In terms of the questions that were provided, I know Nanette Barragan's office went over kind of the changes to the district, but we've communicated with House Ethics and just our office's guidelines for this is that we cannot discuss the new district boundaries since the Congressman still represents the 33rd Congressional District of California. So that's the reasoning why we can't go into too much details, but what you're familiar with is our district. We still serve what will be our district next year, given the election. We'll serve our constituents appropriately, and we'll have more information about like how we'll still handle casework and things like that as the year progresses. You can go to wedrawthelines.ca.gov to see the changes, but I can just tell you off the bat, the South Bay lines haven't changed super dramatically. It's most of the change has happened in the west side. In terms of a gridlock question, I think my other federal counterparts have answered that question pretty well, but I want to highlight that the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, which is passed pretty annually, included important reforms to address sexual assault in the military, as well as provisions that the Congressman offered to continue the prohibition of coalition aircraft refueling in Yemen and reform the practice of assignment by restrictions of the State Department. It also included the provision that authorizes the VA to fund collected pursuant to leases, easements, civil asset forfeitures, or use agreements at the West LA VA for the development of supportive housing and services on campus for homeless veterans. It also included provision that would help us one day utilize working dogs to detect early stages of diseases like COVID-19 and future viruses. And then it also would keep Americans safe while holding the federal government and our military accountable for its foreign policy and national security decisions. And then I wanted to highlight the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which was really important. And the Congressman has been advocating for infrastructure and transportation funding for quite a while. And we'll go more into that during our grant workshop information session. To answer the question about considering the regular emergence of COVID-19 variants, how does the federal government plan on transitioning from pandemic response to endemic planning and response? So the Congressman in September 2021 urged the Biden administration to donate unused COVID vaccines doses to developing countries. In the letter, he argues that providing vaccines to developing countries both ensures supplies are not wasted and helps the world move closer to ending the pandemic. And we're seeing kind of the effects of not vaccinating people quickly enough in the form of these variants. We also need to have better testing. All people in the US need access to free or low cost at-home tests. And some of the measures that the Biden administration, urged by members of Congress, has taken to do this week and last week as well is extremely important by sending out 500 million at-home rapid tests, and we'll make announcements and guide people through social media about the best way to get a hold of those tests, as well as the announcement and mandate that insurance companies and group healthcare plans must cover the cost of at-home tests, at least 8 per month, starting January 15th, to improve testing access. And then better masks is also really important. I know many of you have heard the news about cloth masks not being super effective anymore in the light of the Omicron variant, but use N95 masks, KN95 masks, get a hold of those, and as well as if there's a vaccine mandate in place, to follow that as well. I know it was a long update. I just wanted to answer the questions. Congress is still working, and I know there's certain things that we'd love to see passed, like the Build Back Better Act, but I just wanted to highlight what we have accomplished.
Thank you, Aurelia, for that thorough update. Really appreciate it. You referenced a town hall meeting. Did you want to throw a link to that in the chat so that we can plan on that?
So I can send the Zoom information to whoever is interested. I think the COG was already invited to it, but it's directed to city staff. But Natalie or David can get in contact with me, and we can facilitate getting that out to people.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have a few minutes here before we turn it over to our state representatives. Does anyone have any questions for our federal representatives? Trying to look for hands going up. Don't be shy, folks. All right, well, we can ask questions at the end too. At this point in the agenda, I'm going to toss it over to our chair of the South Bay COG, Mayor Drew Boyles.
Thanks, Stacy. All right, appreciate that. Next up, we have from Senator Stephen Bradford's office, we have Jasmine Leon Guerrero, excuse me. Jasmine, you there?
Yes. Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning, South Bay COG. Thank you so much for having me here to present this legislative briefing on behalf of Senator Bradford, who is up in session up in Sacramento today. My name is Jasmine Leon Guerrero. I'm the district representative of State Senator Stephen Bradford of the 35th Senate District. I hope you guys are all enjoying your new year and staying healthy and safe. So I'm going to go through the questions. So to start off, just a quick overview of the changes of the 35th Senate District boundaries. We lost all of Torrance from our district, half of Gardena as well. However, we gained LAX and other unincorporated parts of Los Angeles County above Watts. We still have Inglewood, Hawthorne, Lawndale, Carson, Compton, and San Pedro. And moving on to the other legislative questions, thank you so much for that question on slow speed electric vehicles. Senator Bradford has always been a supporter of clean, renewable energy and zero emission vehicles. He has not taken an official position, however, on any future legislation regarding incentivizing the purchase of slow speed vehicles yet, but I can say that he supports Governor Newsom's executive order to require all new cars and passenger trucks sold in California be zero emission vehicles by 2035. And in regards to the conservatorship laws to those experiencing homelessness and behavioral health crises, mental health crises, it's a new developing concept, and the governor did mention as part of his plan to tackle homelessness and behavioral health is to tackle conservatorship reform. But that's the only real movement we've seen on this matter recently. It's also seen on his budget summary that just came out a couple days ago. The budget includes over $1 million for the Judicial Council to complete a comprehensive study of probate conservatorships and develop recommendations for that. But there's definitely an interest there. The senator is looking at the issue closely and wants to make the best decision with all of the facts and knowing more of the background by working with local and state officials to better understand and resolve the issue. It's obviously an important issue our office is aware of. Unfortunately, that's all I can really say about that matter at this time. And in the district this year, Senator Bradford's top priority will be recovering from the pandemic and keeping his constituents safe by encouraging to get vaccinated and boosted. He is motivated to build the economy back by focusing on local businesses and local business owners, specifically providing resources to increase equity in the cannabis industry. And as a side note, just last week, the Department of Cannabis Control released criteria and regulations for a $30 million statewide equity cannabis fee waiver program. And it's as a result of Senator Bradford's bill in 2019, which created this program. He has worked closely in the construction of the program that is designed to assist those who are either previously convicted or arrested of cannabis-related offenses or are living at or below 60% of the AMI or the area median income, or live in a community that is disproportionately negatively impacted by the past cannabis policies. And he and his office also continue to support his constituents that have, unemployment and disability insurance issues with EDD. And most recently, the housing is key. They have the mortgage relief program as well. We've gotten a lot of calls and support for that. And as far as the priorities up in Sacramento, up in the Capitol, the senator is actually still working on his legislative package, and he's trying to finalize what his priorities will be this year. However, I can confidently say that his focus will continue to be on equity, whether it be on criminal justice reform, housing, or labor. His legislation will always have an equity focus. Also, the senator will continue the important work that he's doing at the Reparations Task Force. I'm sure you are all aware the task force is charged with investigating the history of injustice and brutality against African Americans, with a special consideration for those who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States in the past. Their previous meetings have focused on public comment and hearing experiences of callers and guests. And I'm not quite sure when the next meeting is at the moment. It's not scheduled yet, but the group must recommend ways to educate the public about its findings and potential compensation and or other remedies. And it will deliver a reparations proposal to the legislature by July 1st, 2023, and that can become law. And that's all for me. Thank you so much, and stay safe, everybody.
Thanks, Jasmine. Appreciate you being on.
Thanks.
All right, next up from Senator Ben Allen's office, we have Alina Wilbro. Alina.
Hey, everyone. Good morning. I am here with a relatively brief update, I guess brief in terms of what I usually do. So maybe that's good or bad. As most of you know, I'm sure our legislative session has pretty much just started. We're just entering our second week now. So we will not have a finger on the pulse of what these final bill packages will look like until about February 18th. There are a few bills that have been submitted, a few that are already going through committees. We just had our first committee hearing with the Education Committee yesterday for SB 579, which is our hold harmless extension bill, which we really did for small school districts in the South Bay who are hurting with their enrollment numbers right now. We just want to be able to make sure that they can stay afloat again for this next year, as enrollment-based funding has or should have decreased. So that went very well. It came out of committee and there was a lot of support for that bill. So we will have a better sense of what all these bills look like a little later in February, but right now we do have that bill that is up and running. There were a few questions, as everyone has stated, that have been submitted. I'll just kind of go through some of them. As I'm sure you all know, our district has not changed so much in terms of what we lost. What we lost is really the neighborhoods of Westchester Playa and a very small portion of South Hollywood. That said, we have gained quite a bit of territory all throughout Malibu, Agora Hills, and Calabasas, and Topanga. We also got South Gardena and all of Torrance. So while it seems like we didn't lose too much, we did gain quite a bit of territory. Of course, that will not go into effect until after November. So that is not currently the district that we represent. We're still representing our SD 26, which will now be SD 24 when those changes go into effect. In terms of housing at the state level, we really don't know what's happening at the state level yet because, again, the bill packages have not been submitted across the board. We really don't know all the housing bills that will be submitted by legislators. We were asked if we would support legislation requiring the state to evaluate the effectiveness of housing bills already passed. I can't commit to any bill that we haven't seen language on or supported, or sorry, had a couple meetings on yet. So we'd be more than happy to talk about that, but I can't commit to anything that we have not actually seen or talked about. I know that the SBCOG is committed to legislation that will incentivize the purchase of slow speed electric vehicles. And we did have a meeting, a lovely meeting late last year, I want to say, I can't remember anymore the timing of things, with Jackie and David about this topic. And of course, we're supportive of clean energy and electric vehicles and clean transportation. Again, as Jasmine said as well, we want to see a little bit of that language before officially supporting that. But of course, we're on board with anything that has to do with clean and accessible energy and transportation. It's back to the housing part. I did want to say that, of course, the governor's budget did come out earlier this week. This budget is nowhere near final. It will go through quite a few changes. It was a $286 billion budget. It's a big guy. It's about 9% higher than it's ever been. And more than $2 billion in that budget is proposed to go towards affordable housing and sustainable development in urban fill areas of the state. That is $500 million for infill infrastructure grant programs, and then $300 million for affordable housing and sustainable communities programs. Again, that number can change quite a bit. We have no idea what the final version will look like now, and as that budget goes through budget committee and et cetera, we'll have a little bit more of an idea what that looks like. I was asked a question about the future of the new Senate Climate Working Group for 2020, and that was formed by Senate Pro Tem Tony Atkins. And if you haven't heard of this working group, which I'm sure many of you haven't, they are focused on 4 key topic areas, and that is transitioning from fossil fuels, labor and career training, greening the energy grid, and adaptation and resiliency. And so far, the working group has held listening sessions with numerous stakeholder groups, including clean energy advocates, environmental and environmental justice groups, energy industry groups, and business and agricultural interests. And the goal of these meetings is to hear viewpoints and understand priorities and begin to identify potential solutions that can help the state achieve our climate goals and ensure just transition from existing oil and gas workers and creating a robust kind of career pipeline for new green jobs. I do predict that in the next year or two that there'll be much more actionable work coming out of the working group. But right now they've been in that kind of information collection stage. So I'm hoping that the future of this working group is some actionable items, hopefully in the next year. But other than that, I think that sums it up. I will have more for you the next meeting when we have more of a legislative package put together.
Awesome. Thanks, Alina. It's amazing how quickly we go when the elected officials are not much as well.
Isn't that true?
Thank you for being so succinct and effective. Appreciate it. Okay, we're on to, let's see here. We've got from Assemblymember Autumn Burke's office, we have Brandon Stansel. Brandon.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for having me here today. I will continue this fast speed pace because as I am not an elected official, I will make sure I'm brief here. I just have a few things to highlight today. I sent over the short bills that we have introduced so far in the Assembly to Natalie. She stated that she will put that in the chat, but I do just want to highlight one of those bills, which is AB 1612. Federal Consolidated Appropriations Act. Basically, it's going to help small businesses that have been affected by the pandemic. The Assemblywoman is really taking a priority and representing and highlighting our small businesses that have been affected, and really wants to just make sure that we're there to support them. We've been doing for the past couple of years now, just a small business of the month every month, just highlighting business throughout our district. Just letting them know that we're here for them and we support them. And so I do want to highlight that bill again. That's AB 1612. And I'll get to the questions that were provided here. First, with the changes of our district. like Alina previously stated, we didn't have much change in our district as well. Looks like we just are going to be losing El Segundo and small parts of Westchester. So we're happy to maintain the relationships that we have with our district and looking forward to continuing those relationships throughout the 62nd Assembly District, which is Inglewood, Hawthorne, our Gardena now, Westchester, Playa del Rey. I'm sorry, not Westchester, Playa del Rey, Playa Vista, Venice, Marina del Rey. So we're looking forward to continuing those relationships, and we're happy to have those maintained in our district. And then also with the COG is asking for the legislation regards to the incentivized purchase of the slow speed electric vehicles. Yes, this Assemblywoman has been supportive of such legislation before in the past. We don't want to commit it to anything in the future right now, but if it's regarding clean energy, the Assemblywoman, like I said, has been supportive in the past and more than likely will be supportive in the future. So you can count on her support on that. And then the last question here regarding the COVID-19 variants. The Assemblywoman will continue to support any legislation that is going to aid coronavirus relief. We did so with our legislation last year on AB 80. We're looking forward to do it again next year. Just support anything that's going to help our district with getting PPE equipment if we have any events in the future, protecting our community with masks, hand sanitizer, anything of that nature that's going to keep our community health and safe, and encouraging our community to go and get vaccinated. The Assemblywoman is a very strong advocate of that, and throughout our district, throughout our office, we're the same. So we're encouraging our community to go and do so, and we will continue to do that in the future. And for that, that is my update.
Thanks, Brandon. And I was remiss at asking if there are anyone had questions for Alina in Senator Allen's office or for Brandon in Autumn Burke's office. Any questions? I'm not seeing any. Jackie, are you seeing any questions?
No, I'm not.
Okay, moving along. Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate that. All right, we're on to, we've got Assembly Member O'Donnell's staffer, Eileen Tovar on the line. Eileen?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Are you able to hear me?
Absolutely, thank you.
Perfect. Well, good morning. My name is Eileen Tovar. I'm a field representative for Assembly Member Patrick O'Donnell. It's wonderful to see all of you in the new year. So happy new year. And I'm happy to provide updates in regards to the redistricting changes within our district. So as of right now, the Assembly Member represents the 70th Assembly District. It has now been changed to the 69th Assembly District. And our district no longer will be including San Pedro and the Port of LA. We will continue to have Long Beach and the Port of Long Beach, and we now have the City of Carson, and we'll continue to represent the City of Signal Hill and the Catalina Island, the City of Avalon. In terms of addressing zero emission vehicles, so the Assembly Member is in support of, green zero emission vehicles, particularly, surrounding the port area. He is an advocate for helping the ports meet their climate goals, and that includes basically making their vehicles that are coming in and out of the ports more green. So recently there has been a bill that has moved forward through the Assembly committees, and that is Bill AB 365. So that would provide a tax incentive for companies to replace their diesel trucks with cleaner, zero and near zero emission trucks at the ports. So this has passed the Assembly Committee on Revenue and Taxation. So that bill is continuing to move forward. The Assembly Member is, a big advocate for protecting the environment around district. So some other bills that he has had moved forward within the past few days is Bill AB 1553. So that would create a Southern Los Angeles Ocean Chemical Waste and Community Oversight Council. That is to basically address the thousands of corroding barrels that contain unknown chemicals that have been polluting the coastal waters in the San Pedro Basin. So that passed the Assembly Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee. So we're happy to see that move forward. And then we also have another bill, AB 353, that will protect Long Beach and the tie lines there. So that passed through the Assembly Natural Resource Committee, and that is Bill AB, like I said, 353. So we have those moving forward. As my other colleagues and other state offices have mentioned, the governor has released his budget for the year. And basically, we want to make sure that the budget will continue to address the supply chain congestion at the ports. It has somewhat improved a bit with some of the measures that the ports have implemented, as well as the state and with the assistance of the federal government. But we want to continue to see the governor focus on making these new investments. And that includes a proposed workforce development training center. So that way we have, a reliable and stable workforce to continue to work in this sector. So we're excited to see that. As well as we're glad to see the $900 million to expand access to zero emission vehicle infrastructure. However, we feel it is important that the state takes a technology neutral approach with these investments, supporting all viable clean vehicle technologies, including hydrogen fuel cells, in addition to battery electric. So those are just some of the updates that I have. And as always, you can always reach out to our office if you have any questions or if there's anything else that we can get for all of you in terms of information.
Great, thanks, Eileen. All right, any questions for Eileen? It doesn't look like it. Okay, we are on to, thanks so much for being here, Eileen, really appreciate it. Okay, next we're gonna have Jeff Kiernan from the League of Cities speak. Jeff, floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I didn't see myself on the agenda, and I had not necessarily known if I was going to be able to be here this morning, but I appreciate it. I had just started kind of pulling together some notes for everyone. Lots of things going on, obviously, with the budget and the legislature being back in town. We'll start sort of with the budget and what we're seeing in the public safety sector. The $285 million for organized retail theft in the budget, proposed budget, is certainly good news. That's going to be something we're going to be working on this year. The Los Angeles County Division of the League does include a public safety strategic goal for this year. So that's something that we're certainly going to be looking at. Lots of money again for wildfires, including the funding for heavy equipment for fires, for fire stations. I know our fire chiefs have just mentioned to us that they want to see more direct funding to those agencies. So we're probably going to be looking at something in a budget act along those lines too. There was a mention this morning of the right to restrooms bill. This is a bill that I believe was just introduced last year by Assemblymember Quirk Silva. She's shelving the bill that she had last year, but reintroducing it as another bill. We're going to continue to monitor that. It really depends on how prescriptive the bill is. If provisions are spelled out for surveillance and increased costs, that's something that we really need to pay attention to. So we're going to be looking at that. The governor did mention a gas tax holiday. We obviously want to make sure that any gas tax holiday that he ends up finalizing in the budget, that cities are made whole in that arrangement. We don't want to see cities lose transportation funding over a gas tax holiday. Overall, those city revenues do seem to be stabilizing after the pandemic. We're going to continue to look at any of those trends as far as the TOT and other taxes. There are still some discussions in the legislature about sales tax and property tax holidays or exemptions throughout the year. We're going to continue to oppose any of those efforts. The biggest, obviously, with city revenues is the American Rescue Plan Act, and the final rule for that federal program was just announced earlier this week. There have been 2 Treasury webinars so far, and I anticipate that either NLC or CalCities will be putting forward some additional webinars for our city leaders so that they can understand what that final rule means. The biggest piece of information out of that final rule is that there is sort of a standard type deduction or request for $10 million worth of revenue replacement. You really don't have to prove anything in order to use that money. And with so many cities, total dollar amounts being lower than $10 million that they receive from the American Rescue Plan Act, that's a huge pot of money that can be used for just about anything. So that's certainly good news. Otherwise, I did issues that we've kind of been hearing from cities just in this year, talking about potential pieces of legislation, public records requests continue to be a driver of big costs and wastes of staff time. So that's something that there's been some interest in trying to put together some reform of that for many years now. So we're going to continue to try to look at that. Brown Act reform, you know, we are working in this virtual environment. The governor just recently extended that emergency order that allows us to meet virtually through March, which doesn't seem really to be all that much time with Omicron surging across the area and many cities going back to virtual only. So that is something that we're going to continue to work on. I know the COG has been talking about Brown Act reform for a little while and hopes that we can maintain some of this virtual benefits that we've seen with public participation and all that. So it's something that I hope we can work together on with the COG. And then finally, street vending. There have been a number of cities that have approached me about issues with street vending, and it hasn't been something that the legislature has been willing to step up and actually run a bill on, but we're going to continue to look at that and see if we can start to talk with other cities and see what reforms are needed. So if you have any interest in any of those topics, please do let me know. And then I think that's it, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate you being on. Thank you for doing that, especially ad hoc. Much appreciated. Any questions for Jeff? Doesn't look like it. You were that good, Jeff, that comprehensive. Okay, Jackie, I'm going to turn it back over to you. I think that completes what I have on the agenda. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, we have opportunity for public comment if there's any public comment. And we do meet quarterly, so our next meeting will be April 14th. At this point, I would imagine it's still Zoom, but we'll let you know if we're going to change any of that. And one of the things you can see is that during this meeting, we did send our legislators offices questions in advance. If you have questions that you would like us to ask them, please send them to us in advance, and we'll make sure that we send them to the legislative offices. So with that, Mr. Chair, I don't think I have anything else.
Great, thank you. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.